Hey guys, Matt here for MD Punk, and with me is Dave, IronFury, and we are the Superplex Bros. But we're actually not doing this as a Superplex Bros official kind of deal. This isn't like a podcast episode or anything, despite the fact that it is just audio with this image you're seeing on screen. This is the first actual episode of our Dragon Ball discussion series. The pilot episode was extracted from the Superplex Bros podcast live episode 6, and it was because of that discussion, which was like half an hour long, that we were like, man, like, we actually are good at talking about Dragon Ball. Let's keep doing this, and now here we are. Today's topic is none other than ranking the what I call the Big Six Dragon Ball villains from worst to best. Now, of course, you're free to agree, you're free to disagree. We're open for discussion. Make sure you leave a comment down below and tell us if you agree or disagree with our list or our reasoning as to why our villains are ranked the way they are. We did discuss our list before we started recording, and it is already set in stone. We have agreed upon the top 6.
Yeah, also I don't know if you've decided this yet, Matt, but I think it's pretty safe to say that means these will no longer be a part of the Superplex Bros podcast, at least not in any major capacity. This is now going to be its own series. Without further ado, though, yeah, let's get into the discussion.
Alright, so I guess the first thing we should talk about is our criteria for how we ranked these villains, because I think that's something very important for people to understand. And actually, the way we viewed these villains was actually rather different, even though our end result was somehow almost exactly the same, and we just made one quick swap and our list was set. I ranked them based on, first off, obviously the character themselves, and then what their presence and their arc had an impact on the entire franchise and series of Dragon Ball as a whole. So it's not only just the character and their villainous deeds, it's also connected to, like, oh, Frieza, you thought Frieza, Super Saiyan was introduced. That was huge. That elevates the importance of this villain to me. Like, that's how I ranked them.
That's part of it, definitely. I also went with impact, but I also went with overall just how much I like the character. Because
Which is what I said as well. That was a part of it.
Yeah. So I definitely think that's the best way to go about it. Obviously, there's no 100% objective way to list these guys. There's obviously some semblance of opinion in there. In fact, it's almost all opinion. So, just gotta go.
Yeah, I'd say it's 100% opinion, especially when we get to our number 1 pick. But we'll talk about that way later.
Yeah, definitely. Especially since we're probably going to be in the minority.
Yeah, so we are starting this list actually in the original Dragon Ball, and funny enough, we're actually not putting GT on here at all, despite it having 3 big villains.
Wait, we are? I thought we swapped it around.
No, I'm just saying in general.
We're starting.
This whole list expands from the original Dragon Ball through Super. GT's not on here, but our first actual villain we're going to talk about today, ranking in at number 6, is none other than the final villain of Dragon Ball Z. It is Majin Buu.
Yes, Majin Buu. He's big. He's pink. He's bad, and he was a pretty beastly son of a bitch. First off, if you're talking about Super Buu, the first villain to eradicate almost all of humanity.
Instantly as well.
Instantly. The first villain to do it. Obviously, of course, for plot reasons, only, a couple survived. Actually, if you really think about it, the only people that survived were Mr. Satan, who was the only pure-blooded human, and then the Half-Saiyans.
Yeah, because he ended up killing or eating most of the people on the lookout.
Yep. But,
so, the reason Boo's number 6 on this list is that not so much that his impact was small on the series. Of course, you can't like talk about the Majin Buu arc without bringing up Super Saiyan 3 or the fusion technique, which brought us Gotenks, or the Potara earrings, which brought us Vegito. It's like Buu himself as a villain and how his character was pretty is what heavily swayed. Like, you could, for me, you could swap 5 and 6 on this list very easily, and there's not much of a change. But in terms of, like, while Boo's arc had a huge impact on the franchise, Boo's actual character was weak enough to knock him down to number 6, because at the end of the day, if you look at all the other villains we're going to talk about, Majin Buu is easily the least enticing, the least charismatic, and the least interesting villain on this list.
Yeah, I honestly think that you mentioned Super Saiyan 3. I feel like Buu really played no part in that. It was just the natural progression. I would give him more credit with Fusion and Potara, but Super Saiyan 3 was just like the next logical thing after Super Saiyan 2. So you could have put any villain in that place, and if you made him powerful enough, Super Saiyan 3 wasn't an inevitability. But he played no role into the actual making of that particular, step. That said, again...
Well, no, but it was first used on him. He was the first villain that was strong enough to where Goku had to bring out Super Saiyan 3.
True,
so therefore, that is part of the impact of the arc on the series that Majin Buu was the central villain of, which is, again, my whole point in how I ranked these villains.
Yeah... I guess.
Well, yes, he wasn't directly responsible for the creation of Super Saiyan 3. Goku made that transformation in the other world. It was the first time Goku had to actually use it.
Fair enough. But again, it also just comes down to the fact that Boo's character is pretty much non-existent. Like, he ranges from childlike demeanor to just savage brute. And then the only time he gets a semblance of character is when he's fused with Gotenks and Piccolo and Gohan, or when he absorbs all of them. That's the only time he gets a semblance of character, and even then, it's fairly generic. It's just that's really the problem with Buu. Like, you could tell that Toriyama was Toriyama was like, okay, I'm just gonna put whatever here. And just kind of run with it.
It's another one of the villains that, like, in Boo's or Fat Boo's form, was another one of his editors.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, while the final fight with Kid Buu was rather satisfying, I do think the best fight in this whole arc and with Buu was against Gohan versus Bootanks, and then Vegito versus Buuhan. Like, the Gotenks individual fights were okay, especially when he went Super Saiyan 3 and all that. It was decent, but I don't know, man. Like, Buu did not have as standout as Super Saiyan 3's first appearance was. That fight was so short-lived, and especially if you read the manga, it was even more short-lived. That it's hard to consider that a proper fight. And then, like, Kid Buu's fight was just Goku and Vegeta take turns until Goku says, fuck it, I'm doing a Spirit Bomb.
Yeah, to me, the best part of the entire Buu arc is honestly, like, the introduction of Gohan with his full potential unlocked. Because he became, like, a beast of a fighter, and his confidence went up. Like, he wasn't just the kid who was like, I don't want to fight. He was like, I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah, he was like, fight you, no, I'm here to kill you. And everyone was like, oh, shit,
that's easily the best line that Gohan ever had in the entire series of Dragon Ball.
Yep, and then he regressed significantly.
Yeah, and it's a shame. But the fact is, like, usually the villain is one of the best parts of an arc. And Buu really just doesn't play that kind of role at all.
No, he doesn't. So that's why he's number 6, and I don't think there's much more to say on that front. His fights were, for the most part, subpar. His personality was basic and minimalist at best, and it's not that we hate Buu, he just happens to be the bottom of this particular list.
I honestly think Buu just works better as a side character. Like, right now, in Super, like, Buu as a good guy, I think works a lot better than Buu as a villain.
Definitely. Speaking of characters that work better as a good guy than a villain. That brings us to number 5 on our list. None other than the final big bad of Dragon Ball, Piccolo. Both forms. Of course, we got to talk about the evil King Piccolo first, and then Ma Jr.
Yeah, I'm honestly, I love Demon King Piccolo. I love Demon King Piccolo. He was an awesome villain, and honestly, his impact on the series is a lot bigger than people give credit for.
I feel like his arc and his appearance is what led to Dragon Ball becoming Dragon Ball Z.
And not only that, but he was the first villain to introduce death to a significant character.
Yep.
He was the first villain to really introduce that. Yeah, Mercenary Tao killed an Indian, but...
Yeah, but that Indian wasn't a major part of the cast.
Exactly.
Like that moment where Tambourine... I believe, Tambourine's the one who actually kills them. Tambourine kills Krillin. It's their first... Oh my god... This series isn't the same happy-go-lucky Adventure Time that it used to be.
No,
like,
and then,
this is a serious threat.
Yeah, Krillin dies, Master Roshi dies, Chaozu dies. You know, this is the first time the Z Fighters have this much loss until the Saiyan Saga.
Yeah, which, funny enough, wasn't long after.
It wasn't long after in the grand scheme of things, but I mean, in terms of what Dragon Ball was accustomed to at the time. You know, this was huge, and Piccolo was like the first. He was merciless. He got what he wanted. He was successful in getting his wish. He got his wish for eternal youth, and then he killed Shenron so that nobody else could get the Dragon Balls to use against him.
Yeah, which is something like no other villain has come close to being able to do.
No, not at all. In fact, he's one of the few villains that actually succeeds in doing what he wants. He just ends up losing in the end afterward.
Yeah. And I do believe this is one of the first few times as well that, like, of course in hindsight, it's easy to say this, but, like, you really starting to see Goku starting to get Zenkai boosts. Because he loses to Piccolo the first time.
Yeah.
And he comes back stronger.
Yeah, and then they did that whole Mystic Water bullshit, which...
Yeah, let's not.
That was kind of just a MacGuffin bullshit thing, but... otherwise, yeah, I really do think this was the first real case of a Zenkai boost, and honestly, just... I love the fact that Piccolo actually managed to take over the world.
Yeah, everyone was bowing to his feet. Hell, the fucking Pilafin gang were his lackeys.
Yeah.
And like, we consider they were the first villains of the series to be reduced. Now, of course, we know what they're reduced to now, but again, look at this in terms of when it was just Dragon Ball. Like, the first original villains are now just, like, at this man's feet, groveling, hoping they don't die.
Yeah. I know Piccolo's at number 5 here, but to me, Piccolo's fucking awesome. And more specifically, King Piccolo.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, the only reason Piccolo's not higher on this list is because the other 4 villains we're going to talk about, first off, it's not even that they accomplished their goals, it's just that, like, their impact on the series is just, it is significantly stronger than Piccolo. Sure, you can, as I said earlier, this is the first arc that kind of began the transition from comedy to proper shonen battle manga. But at the same time, these villains that followed him were basically just, like, amped up versions of Piccolo.
Yeah, Piccolo was the archetype, but other villains would come along and do it better in the grand scheme of things. But I definitely think Piccolo's place in history, at least in Dragon Ball history, definitely cannot be denied. He definitely is deserving of, in that, top 5 echelon of, like, best Dragon Ball villains. Easily, and his character is just great. Like, he's not just evil; he loves being evil. He's so happy with how malicious and horrible he is, and some people don't like that, because obviously everybody says that the best villains are villains who believe that what they're doing is good. But you know what? Sometimes I just like people who embrace how fucked up they really are. Yeah,
I mean, there's nothing wrong, I feel, with being a villain for the sake of being a villain.
It's like Kaio in Fist of the North Star. A lot of people hate Kaio. They think he's a terrible villain. I fucking love Kaio. He was a great villain, and sometimes you just need a guy who is just there to be big, scary, and just a monster for the hero to go over. And that's what Piccolo was.
Without a doubt. And then, of course, it's hard to talk about one Piccolo without talking about the other, because technically, yes, Piccolo Jr., or who just became known as just straight Piccolo from Z onward, essentially, he was also a villain, and he was the first villain that was recruited to become one of the Z Warriors.
He was, and I don't think Piccolo Jr. works as well as a villain as the King did, but obviously...
He just brought us a better fight.
He definitely gave us the better fight. I actually really think that the Piccolo Goku fight from Dragon Ball is still one of the best fights in all of Dragon Ball. Like, it's...
Another countdown list, perhaps? Hint, hint?
Yeah, definitely an option. But I go back and watch that one periodically because I love watching that fight. Actually, I really love Dragon Ball as a whole. But
yeah, I feel like a lot of people don't like the original Dragon Ball, and I find it hard for people to ignore its importance to the series, because it is how everything started. The games are especially bad with this. They just say, fuck Dragon Ball, it's Z, GT, and of course now Super. That's all you're going to get. Xenoverse.
Which is funny, because I actually prefer the original Dragon Ball over Z for the most part. To a point.
I prefer aspects of the original Dragon Ball over Z. But
I would say,
as a whole package, I do have to lean towards Z myself.
I would say
I'm also not one of those people who say fuck the original.
I would say, for me, like from about the Red Ribbon saga onward, I just think Dragon Ball is just straight awesome. Because remember, the original idea of Dragon Ball was that it was an adventure story, and then Dragon Ball Z came along. It's just like, nope, just fighting, and that's just kind of it. And there was a real charm to Dragon Ball that was just completely lost with Z after the first arc. And don't get me wrong, Z is awesome for completely different reasons, but there's something I don't know. It's the simple charm of Dragon Ball that just really gets to me.
But yeah, so going back to Ma Jr. for a moment, like, his motivations as a villain are actually incredibly weak. And since we grouped the two Piccolos together, I do think it's one of the reasons why you kind of have to knock Piccolo down at number 5 instead of having him at number 4. Because one could argue that, like Boo and Piccolo, you could also easily flip-flop these two. But Ma Jr.'s reasoning as a villain and wanting to fight and kill Goku is just because it's kind of like in his DNA, per se.
Daddy issues.
He knows it's daddy issues, and that's not fun.
Where my daddy, where?
But like, that arc is exceptionally short. It's just the Budokai Tenkaichi tournament.
Yeah, it is. Like, Piccolo doesn't even come back in like the aftermath of that at all.
No, we just go. He goes off to the mountains for like 5 years.
He goes to the mountains to train.
Yeah.
But, Piccolo's not a Yoshi. He's a Charizard.
That's right.
He's a shiny Charizard. But, yeah. It's sad. Like, technically they're separate characters, but technically they're not.
Yeah, he's really more of like a reincarnation of Demon King Piccolo that just happened to be swayed to Goku's side.
Is it kind
mostly because of Gohan?
Yeah, really. Like, Piccolo's story arc is mostly in Z, and it's him transforming from wanting to take over the world to wanting to protect it. And his arc pretty much ends after the Saiyan saga, in terms of like his actual moral alignment.
Oh yeah, after the Saiyan saga is done, or pretty much for the moment that he sacrifices himself to protect Gohan, Piccolo is officially a Z fighter.
Yep. Because remember, when he started in the Saiyan saga, he was only having a temporary truce so that he could get rid of the bigger threat. But then Gohan swayed him, basically, by just virtue of being around him, you know, to hey, maybe this planet isn't something to be conquered. Maybe, you can actually enjoy it.
Yep.
And then
And there's
Piccolo
another
kind of became
villain.
a bitch.
Yeah. Sad. Well, he still had a few more moments, but we'll get to those another day.
Yeah, and then after that, it's just like, ah, villain, ah.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
It's fucking
Anyway,
horrible.
but Piccolo isn't the only villain who had a change of heart. That brings us to our number 4 villain, Vegeta, the first big bad of Dragon Ball Z, because I don't count Raditz or Nappa. Vegeta is the big bad of the Saiyan saga, and he, believe it or not, people don't really think about this too much. Well, I mean, of course, any hardcore Dragon Ball fan who's listening to this will be like, I knew this already. I totally thought that. But Vegeta doesn't become a good guy until the Buu saga. He is not considered a member of, like, the core Z fighters until after Majin Vegeta happens.
That's pretty much, and honestly, I would even say he doesn't really become a good guy until he finally accepts the fact that, Goku's better than him.
Which is not long after that, really.
Well, it's right at the end of the Kid Buu fight.
Yeah, which is, in terms of how, not looking at the anime, but in the manga, really is not that long after.
Yeah, true.
A lot of things people don't consider is that, like, the anime really did drag out. The Buu saga, like, the last volume of the manga starts with Vegito and ends with Goku leaving with Oob.
Damn.
Yeah. The manga is super fast-paced. So, these events happen a lot quicker if you look at the original source material. But Vegeta as a villain, one of the most iconic fights in all of Dragon Ball, and that is a huge reason why he is at number 4 and not number 5 or 6. Goku versus Vegeta was our first big Dragon Ball Z battle, complete with a huge key clash between the Kamehameha and the Gallic Gun. We got the Kaioken times 3. We got the whole, oh my god, he became an Ozaru and they have to defeat Vegeta as a great ape. Like, the Spirit Bomb was used for the first time. There's so many firsts, so many big things that happened in the Saiyan Saga with Vegeta. He is an iconic villain, an iconic character of the entire franchise.
Yeah, and he also had the biggest character arc of any character in all of Dragon Ball.
I would even say he surpasses Goku if you count Super.
Well, yeah, because Goku doesn't have much of a character arc.
No. Well, it's slight, but...
It's slight at best.
Vegeta should be the main character, damn it.
He really should. Like, he's easily the most popular character.
Well, he's up there.
Yeah, well, one of them anyway. Like,
Yeah.
I see more people who are fans of Vegeta than I would say are fans of Goku.
Well, yeah. I think in terms of, like, most popular heroes, you're looking at Vegeta and Trunks.
Pretty much. That family.
Yeah. But we're not talking about most popular heroes. We're talking about our favorite villains. So, Dave, your reasoning as why Vegeta is number 4 and not higher or lower.
Well, because I feel like most of Vegeta's best, bits come from after his initial villain run. Like, the best part about Vegeta is his character development throughout the series. But, as a villain, he is a lot of fun to watch. And it's kind of cool how they show this dynamic between him and Nappa, where, like, Nappa's the big, hulking monster, but yet he listens to the guy who's at, like, half his size. There's, like, that weird, intimidating factor about that, like, this guy's way smaller than the big, hulking behemoth, but yet he's clearly much stronger. That was the
power levels.
Yeah, that was the first time that was really kind of a thing in Dragon Ball, where it actually mattered anyway.
Yeah.
And then on top of it off, you had the great fight with Goku. And even going into the next saga, on Namek, Vegeta's still very much a villain.
Very much so.
He's still very much a villain. And he's doing some really evil, nasty shit. Like, he's basically, with Frieza, committing genocide.
Yeah, he wipes out one village completely on his own.
Yeah, so he's clear. But as the series goes on, he starts developing more of a sense of a good side until it eventually plays out where he is a full blown good guy. He's always stern and harsh, sure, but at the end of the day, he does become an actual good guy. And I think the story of Vegeta is better as you watch him, go through this change in moral alignment rather than just, him as a one off villain.
Yeah, and that continues heavily into Dragon Ball Super, where I feel Vegeta has shined the most in regards to getting character development and spotlight. But that's him as a good guy. So, yeah, his actions in the Namek Saga, he starts to show signs of being kind of goodish there, but that's only because they're fighting against Frieza.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, he's only siding with the good guys because the villain of that arc is a bigger threat. He's not siding with
much bigger threat.
He isn't siding with them because he actually feels like there is a moral agreement here, or like because he knows that Frieza is pure evil and needs to be stopped. He only wants him to stop so that he can do his own thing.
Yeah. That's all it is. Vegeta's only on Namek to get his own wish. His whole deal originally was to be like a covert operation, steal the Dragon Balls from under Frieza's nose, and get the fuck out. Get his wish and leave.
Yeah, pretty much.
Unfortunately, of course, everything kind of goes south as they have to do, and he dies.
Well, the thing is, though, imagine if Vegeta did get his wish. You know how different the series would be?
Well, he would have won, first off.
He would have won, but then he never would have had a reason to go back to Earth other than maybe to destroy it.
Yeah.
And who would have been able to stop him?
Nobody, because he would have killed Goku, Gohan, and Krillin on Namek.
Yep.
Speaking of Namek, of course, we have to transition into our number 3 slot here. So we're in our top 3 villains now, and we have to address, it is none other than probably Dragon Ball's most iconic, and here's what people are gonna start freaking the fuck out on us. They're gonna be like, you have Frieza at number 3? You have 2 villains above Frieza? Yes, we do, for reasons we'll properly explain. Frieza is my number 3 villain, and I do feel as if now that we're in the top 3, this race for best villain is really tight. In terms of impact of the series, Frieza is without a doubt up there. There's a reason he was brought back for a movie. Everyone loves Frieza. He is beloved as one of Dragon Ball's best villains, one of anime's best villains ever. The Emperor of Space himself, with his stupid transformations, his 5 minutes that lasted 10 episodes. I mean, there's a lot to love about Frieza, but I do feel as if he suffers from being a bit of a clone of Evil King Piccolo, except in space.
Here's the thing about Frieza. He's everything that King Piccolo was about times 100.
And with transformations.
Yeah, and obviously, that's really good because King Piccolo was an awesome villain, but he just put him on a grander scale. And I definitely think, in my opinion, Frieza's impact on the series is probably the highest, but the other two basically are above him on preference.
Yeah, preference, and because again, we said that we had 2 big criteria for this list, and one of them was impact on the series, the other one was the character themselves. And while Frieza is a good character, the other 2 above him are better characters, and you can already guess probably who they are at this stage. But yeah, impact of the series, it's hard to top Frieza. There's so many big moments in his arc. I mean, Namek is super long. Like, super, super long. They really have to, fight through so many of, his lower level, bodyguards and fighters to even fight him in the first place.
Like, honestly,
every time they start to get an upper hand on Frieza, he introduces, transformations with outside of Kaioken and Great Ape, or when Piccolo became giant, they weren't really that common. And then, like, every time we transformed, you're like, oh my god, how are they going to pull this off? Goku comes back, he struggles, and if it wasn't for Goku becoming a Super Saiyan, Frieza wins on Namek. He would have overpowered Goku, because he already was. He survived the Spirit Bomb.
Yeah, and you gotta remember, at that time, he was only using like 50% of his power.
Yeah, he wasn't in his full power form.
Yeah.
Which was only brought out by Super Saiyan, and even then was weaker than Super Saiyan.
It's funny that you mentioned how much they had to go through on Namek, because I was just thinking about it. Namek would be the only reason why like a Dynasty Warrior style Dragon Ball game would even work, because they basically had to go through Frieza's army before even getting to Frieza. And then
because he just wouldn't make a move. He'd be like, "Oh, you know what? Vegeta's doing things. Zarbon, go get him."
Yeah.
Or, "Oh, you know, fuck it. We're calling the Ginyu Force."
Yeah, like, that's probably the first time and one of the only times where they had to go through so many obstacles just to get to the big bad. Like, even the Android Saga with all of the androids don't compare to, like, they faced an entire army.
Yeah.
And it was pretty dope. It was pretty dope. And you had all these cool characters introduced, all these, like, unique underlings. You know, the Ginyu Force, Zarbon and Dodoria, and just that whole, like, hierarchy of power within Frieza's group. And they just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger with each one, to the point where Frieza just seemed like an insurmountable odd to beat.
And he really was.
Frieza really set the bar for power in Dragon Ball.
Frieza was also where it was like, yeah, power levels are bullshit.
Yeah, pretty much. and then, to top it off, after all of that shit they went through when they faced him on Namek, he comes back. And we find out...
He comes to Earth as a robot.
Well, I was talking more a long way after that.
Oh, do you mean the Resurrection F?
Yeah, Resurrection F. He comes back. He's brought back to life. And it turns out that as powerful as he was, the only reason he wasn't any stronger was because he never trained a day in his life.
Yep. He was natural, gifted, raw power.
Which is insane to think about. That's nuts.
And of course, when he trained for, was it 4 months or 6 months?
It was 4 months.
4 months? Yeah. And he achieved a whole new form that was on par with Super Saiyan gods.
Yeah. That's absolutely insane.
Unfortunately, Frieza's downfall is
his arrogance, for one.
a trait of Saiyans, arrogance and pride. And especially in regards to Resurrection F, he achieves the Golden Frieza form and then immediately goes to Earth. Goku points this out to him as well, basically saying, listen, if you had trained and really mastered this form, maybe we would have had a proper fight. But the reason the Super Saiyan Blue duo overpower Golden Frieza is because he cannot sustain the transformation. It's too new to him.
And the only reason he even came close to beating Goku is because Goku's too naive to just kill him.
Yeah, and he got cheaped out by that goon.
Yep.
Whose name I just don't want to remember because
I think it was like
reasons.
Sorbet or some shit.
Yeah, I think Sorbet sounds right.
I know it was based off of some kind of dessert.
Yeah.
But that whole thing was kind of garbage. But if I'm being perfectly honest, I feel like you didn't need that character at all for any of that to happen.
No, you really
didn't.
And
honestly, this is one of the few times I think Super handled it better than the movie. I think Super actually handled it better than the movie because they at least gave us the interesting thing where Ginyu came back.
Yeah, which is really cool, actually.
But other than that, honestly, the Resurrection F itself is kind of it's fan service.
I think it was originally created as nothing more than fan service because that movie came out before Super was announced.
Yeah, it was fan service. But going back to Frieza as an actual villain, though, he definitely earns the spot of being the most important villain of the series. I think, because just everything that he set the bar for what a powerful villain is, because he was the standard bearer in the entire galaxy in terms of, like, I am the strongest, nobody can touch me, and it took basically a power that hasn't been seen in millennia to beat him.
Yeah.
And then, of course, other characters came along and made that power seem like, a shit show. But that's the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, as great as the villain as Frieza was, though, he was not perfect. Which brings us to our number 2 villain spot. It has to be Cell, who, prior to recent events, was my favorite villain in all of Dragon Ball. I fucking love Cell, okay? He is fucking amazing. And not because Dragon Ball Z Bridge, even though that helps, but Cell as a whole made Frieza look so weak, even though he had Frieza's cells in him, and Vegeta's and Goku's and Piccolo's and everybody else's fucking cells were a part of him. But I do believe that in terms of impact, Cell comes close to reaching Frieza. Of course, he doesn't quite reach those same, like, oh my god moments that the Frieza arc had, but Cell is piggybacking off of a rather lackluster Android arc, which was built up by the appearance of Trunks, my favorite Dragon Ball character in general. Which, of course, since Cell was a big bad of that arc, Trunks' introduction there kind of elevates Cell a little bit more for me in that regard. But this arc, a big part of fighting Cell was trying to go past your limits. That was the big thing with Cell, is we know Cell is this strong, so we've got to be this strong. But how?
And the thing
is, that was the big thing they had to do trying to defeat Cell.
And I honestly feel like every form of Cell is great for its own reasons. Second form, not as much, but the first form and the final form are definitely, like, 2 great villains in and of themselves.
Definitely.
The second form, unfortunately, suffers from, okay, we need to think of something quick. Let's get us out of this form.
Yeah, even though apparently Toriyama liked that form better than the original and the perfect.
Yeah.
He wanted that to be as far as Cell kind of got, but his editor was like, no.
Yeah.
Of course.
Well, the editor of that entire saga was like basically up Toriyama's ass.
For his design work specifically.
Yeah, like, you got an old man and a fat kid as your villain? Get that out of here.
Oh, what's that? 2 hips to teens? No.
Nah, not today. Oh, you got a bug man? Yeah, we gotta fix that. Now he's got big lips? No, that's no good either. You gotta make him more human-like, but without
you gotta make him look like Frieza with wings.
But not with the big lips, because, that could get us in trouble.
Oh my god. You're about to get us in trouble. This is only our second episode.
But then they basically were like, let's make him look like Frieza. With no lipstick.
Yep.
And there he was.
That's perfect Cell for you.
I guess we should talk about the Cell forms individually.
Okay.
Because they're distinctly different.
Yes. I feel as if the first form Cell was like something pulled straight out of a horror movie.
He was definitely... and honestly, I would even go as far as to say, like, he's a combination of, like, a stalker slasher kind of villain with, like, a xenomorph from the Aliens franchise.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty fair assessment. And even when the Z Warriors encounter him... Now, interesting to note that Piccolo is the only real Z fighter to enter combat with this form of Cell. He actually goes into hiding after his bout with Piccolo, but like Trunks sees him, I believe Tien and Krillin see him.
Krillin does, not Tien.
Okay, Tien showed up after.
Yeah, Tien showed up just after.
Yeah. So basically, a lot of people didn't encounter first form Cell. He gave us pretty much our last big, or our second to last big Piccolo moment.
Yeah, pretty much. And It was pretty awesome. Like, he comes in, he's kind of got this Hannibal Lecter thing going. You know, he enjoys his humans with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. But, you know, it was pretty awesome. He drinks people, and he comes in, and Piccolo is the first one to notice that this guy is doing this shit while everybody's focused on the other androids.
Well, it's only because Kami noticed.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, they noticed that this shit's going on. So, for Cell to be so under the radar for so long, that's pretty serious, you know? Because he was a serious threat from the get-go.
Oh, yeah. I think that if, like, Cell had walked in on, like, you know, Super Saiyan Vegeta versus Android 18, or if he just stumbled upon the original fight against Dr. Gero and Android 19, everything would have taken a different turn. He just happened to be in a different part of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And because remember, when Piccolo first confronted Cell, he wasn't strong enough to take on the androids yet. He even said himself, I'm not strong enough to take on 17 and 18 yet. So imagine if Cell came in during the fight between 18 and Vegeta. He would have got demolished, and that would have been it. That would have been the end of the arc.
Who, Cell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cell would have got demolished, and that would have been the end of it.
Yep. Or he could have, more terrifyingly, he could have snuck up on 18 or 17 and absorbed them right then and there.
He very well could have. Actually, with the solar flare, since that's an ability he has, they would have never seen it coming. They never would have seen that coming. The only reason...
It actually would have benefited Cell appearing there.
Probably would have. Because Vegeta would have been so arrogant, you know, get this bug man out of here, I'm fighting these two toys. You know? They would have...
Yeah.
He would have not gave a shit about Cell.
And in a way, that kind of ended up happening anyway.
Yeah, that's basically... It basically would have just happened a lot quicker.
Yeah, but Goku probably would never have the chance to return to action, and people would have died.
Actually, I would even go as far as to say that they all would have lost.
Yeah.
Because Gohan, remember, at that point, Gohan wasn't even a Super Saiyan yet.
No.
And
if they had fought Cell immediately, let's say in this what if scenario, Cell absorbed both androids during the Vegeta 18 fight, became perfect, and didn't come up with the idea of the Cell games, which he wouldn't have because that was because of Trunks.
Yeah.
So
everything would have just been completely for shit.
Yeah.
So anyway, we have, you know, imperfect Cell, and now it's time for the second form.
Semi-perfect Cell.
Semi-perfect Cell. This is obviously the weakest form in terms of character. It's like the in-between between, you know, evil stalker, you know, Hannibal Lecter Cell, and, you know, charming perfect Cell. He's kind of got a bit more sophistication to him, but he's just kind of there.
He's cocky at first, but the main reason why second form Cell, semi-perfect Cell, isn't around for long is because he's immediately thrown into fights, and he's immediately overpowered and defeated by Super Vegeta.
Yeah, and not to mention he's actually held down by Tien, which I think is funny.
Yeah, though it almost killed Tien to do so.
True. But you know what? I actually thought that was a pretty cool moment, because when's the last time a character from the original Dragon Ball, not named Piccolo, did anything important other than die?
That was it.
Because Krillin's big moment was him dying.
Yeah.
Yamcha, his big moment was him dying.
Oh my god.
Tien's big moment was him almost dying.
Yeah. Even one of Piccolo's biggest moments was dying.
Yeah. Dragon Ball Z, aka everybody dies. Except for Goku, who died twice.
Actually, no.
He died twice!
Dragon Ball Z, everyone you know and love will die.
Dragon Ball Z is like the Transformers movie. They kill everybody off and then bring them all back.
That's accurate. So, now, Semi-Perfect Cell, I guess the biggest part of his character is that he's got a bit of the sweet-talking aspect of Perfect Cell because he convinces Vegeta to let him ascend to his perfect form. Now, that's only because Vegeta was his target. It would not have worked with anybody else, but Vegeta's ego was like, you know what? Yeah, we'll do this.
I know you're playing me, but let's do this.
Yeah.
But I also, Semi-Perfect Cell's voice is kind of off-putting.
Yeah, Funimation's dub choice there was not great. To the point where they made him just sound like base form, first form.
Yeah, instead they made him sound like the frickin' alien from Men in Black.
Yeah.
I'm Semi-Perfect Cell, and I'm here to get the androids.
Anyway.
He sounds like he's choking to death.
So let's talk about his perfect form, which is the point where I believe Cell stands out from the rest of the villains, because Cell acts like a Saiyan in this form the most. He acts like a showman. He wants people to see him, to just appreciate his perfection.
Are you entertained?
Showcase his dominance.
That's basically what it is. He's like, are you entertained?
Yeah. He wants to entertain the Earthlings before he eradicates them all.
See, here's the thing, too. I feel like Perfect Cell, like, he could have very easily became, like, a neutral character. Because his motivation isn't necessarily to take over the world. It's just to basically showcase his awesome power. So if anybody could have gave him a little twist, like, hey, you know, there's a martial arts tournament, just fight it out, you know, show your power or whatever. You know, the only reason why he's a villain is because he has no qualms with killing people.
Pretty much.
That's really the only thing that sets him apart from being a good guy. Otherwise, he would have just been the average Saiyan.
Yeah. I feel like the Saiyan cells in Cell really end up dominating his personality when he reaches his perfect form.
Yeah, definitely.
Like he acts a lot like a mutant Vegeta.
It's kind of
a bad thing.
It's kind of his own undoing.
It is his own undoing. He's also the only villain, except for obviously Vegeta and somebody else we're going to talk about, who gets a straight up Zenkai boost.
Yeah, he does. And honestly, I think Perfect Cell is easily the best form. He's easily like the most entertaining form. You know, as fun as Evil Stalker in Perfect Cell was, Perfect Cell is just so goddamn charismatic. He's so charming. You can't help but love him. Even though they kind of went... At the time, it was fairly new, but now it's kind of common. The villain who knows everybody else's moves.
Yeah. That was a big deal at the time.
It was a big deal at the time. Now, everything does that. But at the time, that was a pretty cool thing. And at the very least, they explain it. A lot of times you see that in fiction, they don't even explain it.
That's true.
But, like, in The King of Fighters, for example, Rugal knows Geese and Kaiser's moves, but they never explain why. He just knows them. And that's weird. I don't like that. But, at least with Cell, they explain...
That's King of Fighters.
They explain that, you know, hey, he has their cells, therefore he knows their techniques. And that's pretty cool. And I just like the fact that Cell isn't a pure villain. He's evil in the sense that he's willing to kill people, he's willing to commit genocide, but he doesn't necessarily have evil ambitions.
No. Though he does mention that like he'd go out into space and just start going from planet to planet, fighting strong people and just blowing them up.
Yeah. Like, could you imagine if for like let's say in another hypothetical discussion here. What if...
No, we can't do another one.
Well, I was gonna say,
we're already almost an hour in.
I was gonna say, what if they managed to like convince Cell to be a good guy?
No, let's just not think about that right now. Let's quickly talk about Cell's impact on the series. Immediate thing comes to mind. It's what could have been the end of Gohan's arc as he becomes Super Saiyan 2, surpasses his father, kills Cell barely, and then becomes the protector of Earth. This could have been, and almost was, the end of Dragon Ball. Cell was nearly the last villain.
Yeah. And by all rights, really should have been.
Yeah, because we kind of talked about that with Boo.
By all rights, he really should have been, because there was really nothing left as far as... Well, at the time, there was really nothing left to give a story for.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest things in terms of Cell's impact, too, is just like you said before, he was... that whole arc was about overcoming what you thought was the insurmountable. And, like, getting better than the best. Like, in terms of Super Saiyan. Everybody thought Super Saiyan was the pinnacle. Turns out Super Saiyan 2 is a thing. And...
Well, even before that, there was the Super Vegeta and Ultra Trunks.
Yeah. But ultimately, they were trying to get to Super Saiyan 2.
But they just ended up discovering those in-between forms by accident.
Yeah.
Although Goku discovers them as well, but he's the first one who kind of realizes, these forms are too bulky.
Yeah, definitely. But that whole arc plays a very huge role into Dragon Ball, like, kind of moving forward. Trying to be better than... And honestly, it kind of... it's kind of where we start to see that change in Goku's character a little bit. Where, yes, he always wanted to fight a strong opponent. But now, this is the first time where he actively goes out of his way to get better and better and better and better than he was. And that would have an everlasting mark on the entire series.
That's true. So, I guess it's time to finally get to number 1 on this list. And if you have listened to this whole video, I thank you, because when we decided to do this, I did not expect it to be upwards of an hour.
It's Dragon Ball. We could talk about this shit for days.
Yeah. So, our number 1 choice for villain, and this is going to piss off a lot of people. You're going to have people who are saying, oh, you're just saying that because of how hype and how recent it was. But no matter how much I think on it, I can't think of a villain that I like more than Goku Black / Zamasu. I just can't. Not only was the arc absolutely stellar, but like the whole concept of evil Goku was something in the fan base for so long. It was something people wanted to see since GT. Since before GT, even.
Hell,
and we finally got it. And we got it in an absolutely amazing form. Fusion became important again in this arc. Trunks came back. My boy came back. And just Goku Black was... And I think a big part of it was the performance of Goku's voice actress. Her name suddenly slipped my mind.
Something... Zawa?
Nozawa? Masoka Nozawa? That sounds
yeah.
right. Make fun of us in the comments below, but the performance as Black was just, it honestly sent chills down my spine at some stages. This pair of Goku Black and Zamasu, since they're basically the same person, spoilers, sorry, not sorry, you probably shouldn't have watched this video.
Don't tell them that,
they were watch. They were just they were on a whole new level. And of course you could say that because of how Super and Power levels had progressed. But as villains, they were so close. Because think about this, right? We never would have seen this carry out in the main timeline. Trunks went and recruited Goku and Vegeta to fight Black.
Well, to a point, because you gotta remember... Technically, there's a lot of time loopy bullshit involved here.
Yeah, but like if Trunks never showed up in the first place, why would they have everyone to go to Universe 10?
And if Trunks never showed up in the first place, none of this would have happened. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like they could have avoided Black completely.
Yep.
But instead, he showed up, and this was the first villain since the original Dragon Ball that beat Goku straight up twice.
Yeah, completely overpowered him.
Yeah. There was nothing Goku and Vegeta could do. He was simply too strong, and a big part of it was he was also getting You know, they knocked Black back. He'd get back up stronger. This is the first time in forever that, because with Cell's Zenkai boost didn't come in until he got almost completely killed. Well, because this was a pure Saiyan body, when Goku Black got knocked around and recovered and got back up, he got a traditional Saiyan lineage style Zenkai boost.
Yeah, he did.
So for every bit of training Goku and Vegeta did to get stronger, they were still never really on the same level as Black. Black was still beating them. Sure, Vegeta was starting to wail on them near the end of their fight, but that's when Black realized how to get stronger as a Saiyan. He was like, oh, all I have to do is get mad.
Yeah, pretty much. And honestly, the fight choreography of that entire arc was fantastic. The character development between Black was fantastic. Zamasu, not as much. But without Zamasu, I feel like it would have been a complete package.
He had to be there.
He had to be there. But I definitely think that Black is a stronger character, despite them technically being the same.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
No, he is. He's more interesting.
He's a way more interesting character and it's funny too because again, kind of like with Cell, the Saiyan side of Black really is his undoing.
Yeah, he starts to get to the stage where he's just like, you know, keep getting stronger, keep fighting me. I want to keep fighting you. He even says at one point, I want to keep getting stronger, which is literally a Goku line.
It gets to a point where it's obsessive. He is obsessed with it, like Goku. And like he doesn't even just say it in a way that I want to get stronger. He says, this body wants me to fight you.
Yeah.
Like, it's a clear obsession. And it's just awesome to watch unfold. Now, a lot of people think that Zamasu is a little too whiny and pretentious.
But I think that makes him a good foil to Black.
He's the straight man. In a way. Like,
yeah.
You know, he's the straight man to Black's, you know, obsessed egomaniac. You know, and then when they become merged Zamasu, and all of that, you know, all of that pretentious, you know, I'm a god shit just gets brought up to about 1 million.
Yeah, but thankfully, that doesn't last too long.
Yeah, it doesn't last too long. And we end up getting the return of Vegito, and a new form for Vegito. Vegito Blue.
Right. Which was so hype. I knew it was coming because of the preview the week before, but I still nearly crapped my pants.
Yeah, and then, to top it off, Trunks does the finishing blow to the physical form.
Yeah.
Which was awesome. And it's the first time
Spirit Sword.
It's the first time that it's not Goku doing it.
It's the first time that Goku hasn't beaten a villain since Cell.
Yeah.
And even then, he was technically involved in that.
Yeah, true.
Because that was the father-son Kamehameha.
Yeah, I still am not quite sure how that worked.
Me neither. It's Dragon Ball.
It's weird. Like, was it... I always took that scene as, like, Gohan using his father as motivation. Rather than Goku actually showed up and did it.
It's just one of those weird things that people can't tell what happened, though.
Like, to me, it was more symbolism rather than actually a father-son Kamehameha.
Although that's still the official name for it, so...
Yeah, I know. I guess.
Maybe it's something we'll research and explore in the future for another episode. Let's try not to hark on that too much right now.
Yeah. But anyway, going back to Black. Black is an awesome villain. His impact on the series is not as high as Frieza's, but the fact is, he's one of those villains, or Cell, but he's one of those villains that almost wins entirely.
Even when they kill his physical body, he's still alive and starts to... He kills everyone on Earth. They all completely die. And his chaotic, like... whatever kind of gaseous form that was, starts to bleed to the main timeline.
Yeah.
Like, this thing was... Zamasu was something else. He was on a whole new level of just insanity and craziness. Because he was immortal. Let's not forget that.
Yeah. And remember, the only thing that could destroy him was the absolute top.
Yeah, Zeno. The king of all.
Nothing is going above Zeno in terms of power. So, the fact that they had to call that in to finally take this thing out, that's pretty big. And not only that, but the damage was so bad that they couldn't even go back to that timeline anymore.
Well, no, Zeno destroyed that universe.
That's what I'm saying. Saying. Like, Zamasu was such a threat that the king of the universe, of the multiverse, destroyed the multiverse.
Yep.
And
now we have 2 Zenos in the main timeline.
Which is fucking terrifying.
Yep.
Like, could you...
So...
I'm not even going to say anymore because I'm going to get into a discussion.
Yep. We don't want to put all of our discussion videos into one video, but... I think that just about does it for us. This was over an hour of us talking about our favorite top 6 villains in Dragon Ball. So if you listen to this whole thing, again, thanks a lot, because this was not an easy listen, I'm sure, because we rambled and got sidetracked quite a few times. But again, we expect most people to disagree with us, especially when it comes to putting Black and Zamasu on the top of the list. But it is what it is. We're open to talking with you guys more in the comments about Dragon Ball villains, and why do you guys think Black or Zamasu shouldn't be number 1? Why maybe Cell or Frieza should be number 1? Or hell, you could be one of those really big fans of Majin Buu that think, oh come on, like guys, Boo's number 1. Just we're opening
also,
up the discussion now in the comments. It will continue in the comments. So thanks, Dave, for joining me. Make sure you guys subscribe to his channel. I'll leave an annotation in the video, and follow the Superplex Bros podcast, which is aired live on YouTube right here. It is the only place I do the podcast. Comes first on my YouTube channel, and then it goes to our SoundCloud. And of course, if you're new to my channel, make sure you subscribe here, because I do Dragon Ball stuff, and I do Pokemon duel stuff, and all kinds of wild things. And we're doing our best to really make our brands grow and whatnot. And this series is a new step in that. And so we hope you guys enjoyed this. We know it was really long, but leave a like if you like, dislike if you didn't. Make sure you start that discussion in the comments, and we'll see you guys next week for another Dragon Ball discussion.